Okay, welcome back to our lecture video. So after the introduction, we now proceed to the basic mechanics of the sources of power. For the basic mechanics, we need a clear concept of the fundamental principles of mechanics. So mechanics here is the one that is one of the branches of physics. That is the what we call mechanics. So in here we need the clear concept regarding this mechanics as well as their practical applications to the machinery, and it is necessary to a comprehensive study of our farm machinery. Okay, so mechanics here by definition is the science that deals with the forces and objects' response to the forces when it is applied to them. So during the farm operations, there are forces that acts upon the body. So the mechanics deals with that study and the response, or what will be the response of the object when we applied a specific force. So again, the mechanics is the study wherein it studied regarding the forces and the response of the object when we apply that force. Okay. So we have here the basic or fundamentals that we must know regarding this. Of course, we need the measurements and the conversion of units, and then other calculations. So first, for the units of measurement and its conversion, you can see here the table of the basic quantity used in the mechanics, and its English and SI units, and then the example description of the quantity. So we use the term, for example, the length, the mass, time, speed, force, work, and power, energy, and so on, to quantify our various physical activities involved in our farm operations. Okay, so the units of measurements is a fundamental concept in studying our farm machineries and mechanics. For example, measurements for power of engine is usually expressed in horsepower or HP, and so on. So we need to familiarize ourselves in the terms and the units, quantity, and we need to familiarize ourselves with that, with the units and the quantity used during the farm operations. Okay. So for example, we need to measure our field. So we have here in terms of length, we have the meter for metric, and English is in terms usually in feet, or what else, inches, yards, and so on. While for SI or metric system, we have the meter, the centimeter, kilometer, what are the units of length. We have kilometer, meter, and so on. So the length is a measure of how long or how wide is our field. Not necessarily only for our field. For example, how long is the grain? How long is the leaves of your crops? And so many measurements that we can quantify as length. It is used in measuring the depth of cut of your implements, the width of cut of your implements per tillage. Okay. So there are also computations that requires to or there are also specific requirements. For example, you need to cut your field at a certain depth. Okay, for example, 10 centimeter depth is the cut of your field. The width of cut, for example, you are going to make a row for your vegetable plantation, so you need a specific length of width of cut of your implement, and so on. So for the mass, the metric unit for the mass is usually in terms of kilograms, grams, while for the English, it's usually in terms of pounds. Okay, it is a measure of how weighty the draft animal is. We can derive the weight from the given mass of the draft animal. Okay, so for the time, we have same unit for SI and English system. We have seconds, or minutes, hours, days, and so on. It is a measure of how long the, for example, drying operation will take. About 2 hours. 1 day will it take drying operation, or from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. How long the planting season will take? About 1 month, 4 months. How many hours will it take for a tractor to plow the land? 1 day, 2 hours, and so on. So it's the measure of how long in terms of time. So for the speed, we have the combination of the length and time. So that is the speed. Length over time. Meter per second, kilometer per hour, miles per hour, feet per second, and so on. So speed is described as the quantity that measures how much distance is traveled in a given time. It is used, for example, how much distance is traveled by the tractor in plowing operation. For example, it travels around 5 meters per second. How much distance traveled by the draft animal at its full implement in a given time. For example, the tractor plows the field at a distance of 10 meters per second. 1 meter per second, while the draft animal needs only half, or it takes half meter per second. So as you can see here, you can now compare the speed of the draft animal and the speed of the tractor. Then you can now compute how much time is needed to complete the certain area. So for the force, our units for English are, for metric and English unit, is we have the Newton, symbolizes by big letter N, and pound force. Force can be described as the push or pull that tends to move an object. Okay. The pulling of an implement by the draft animal exhibits a force. Forces are also transmitted from the explosion in the combustion chamber of the engine. In tillage, the force is referred to as draft. Okay. For the work, our unit is in terms of joule or foot-pound. Work involves moving a force through a distance, so it is a combination of the force traveled through a distance. As an implement is pulled through the soil, the animal exerts a tractive force and it moves across the field. So the animal exerts a force as it moves the field. So we can now compute the work done. It performs no matter how long the activity takes to finish. So plowing and land for 1 day is just the same work if you plow the same field using the same equipment for 2 days. Okay. So for the power, we have the units of watts, and for the English system, we have the HP or the horsepower. Power is the rate at which work is performed. The faster the work is done, the greater the power requirement we need. Engine and electric motors are rated in power, so either in terms of watts or in HP. So that is basic mechanics regarding the units measurement. So for the conversion of units from one system to another, here we see that we have two main system. We have the SI in English. Okay, so there are ways in order for us to determine what is the equivalent of one unit from one unit to another. For example, 1 meter is how many feet? Okay, so we need the conversion. We need to convert the metric meter into feet in order for us to determine the specific equivalent or values of the unit. Okay, so in the next video we will try to convert units from one system to another, specifically from metric to English, or from metric to metric, or from English to metric. Okay, so the conversion factors here are very useful when again when we change the unit from one system to another. Okay, the significance of this conversion is that, for example, an electric motor rated in kilowatts can also be determined its value using HP. For example, you need to buy an electric motor, but it is rated in kilowatt. But when you go to the store, or to the hardware, or to the yeah, to the store to buy a certain electric motor, and you have your rated kilowatt, but on the store they have maybe in terms of HP. So how can you buy that specific electric motor when you don't know the its equivalent value in HP? Another example, when you measure your field, and you use metric, for example, in terms of meter, but some other farmers or some other endeavors users might want to use in terms of feet, or they might want to know in terms of English system. Okay, so another thing is that, for example, you measure your produce in terms of pound mass, but on the indication of the fertilizer, bags of fertilizer, for example, is in terms of kilograms. So how much pounds or how much kilograms you need to use to fertilize your field? So you can now play with the units, and you can now play to convert from one system to another. So that is the importance of knowing the conversion of these two.